Okay, so continuing with our snail's pace as we try to work our way through this, right? This part of the chapter is talking about how we control the blood flow through the kidney, because we know that that blood flow will determine the glomerular filtration rate, right? And the glomerular filtration rate will then be used as a metric to determine basically how well the kidney is functioning and how well it can balance the body, ultimately, because that's what we want when the kidney is functioning. Getting rid of waste and maintaining the homeostasis of calciums and sodiums and glucose and so forth in the body. So, again, reminding you, because we've touched on this, but this is kind of consolidating this idea. Blood flowing through the kidneys allows the filtrate to form. Okay, we depend on that. That's that hydrostatic pressure. The rate of filtration, so how fast it moves through there, determines which solutes and how much water are retained, right, which would be absorption. So I said that's why it was so important to keep glomerular filtration rate fairly constant. And which solutes and how much water is discarded. So again, note that becomes urine. There's only 10 millimeters of mercury difference, right, across the glomerulus, that where filtration occurs, for normal filtration. And a change in arterial pressure will significantly change. So if the pressure, our systemic arterial pressure, mean arterial blood pressure changes, we could significantly change the glomerular filtration rate. So the simple way to control the blood flow, and you guys are doing this in a PhysioX to demonstrate this, is control the diameter of the arterioles, the afferent and efferent. This is again a unique capillary situated between two arterioles, which both can be readily controlled in their diameter radius and therefore in the flow of blood. All right, so the control comes down to, oh, I know, surprise, neural and hormonal. So the neural division is, of course, sympathetic nerves, because, again, the smooth muscle of blood vessels is only actually innervated by sympathetic. So you either have sympathetic impulses being sent or you don't. We don't really have a role for the parasympathetic here. So when you're at rest, right, the sympathetic stimulation is low, right, because, again, sympathetic is fight or flight. So there's vasodilation, so bigger, right, tubes, and, of course, this means increased blood flow, so more filtration. When stress occurs, and again, stress is any increase in activity, anything that pushes us out of that constant state. So when stress occurs, sympathetic impulses increase, and this leads to vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction, right, making the tube diameter smaller, will affect flow, and this redirects blood to other organs in need. So there's a point to the vasoconstriction with stress. So again, stress means higher activity, and you got a lot of blood coming into the kidneys. So hey, you can send some of that to another organ that is in more need, which means, again, there'll be less filtration at this point. Okay? Now, if blood pressure drops, all right, and this is what we consider a significant drop, and significance is often achieved by a 10% difference. So if blood pressure drops, all right, and there could be a number of reasons for blood pressure to drop, all right, but if it drops, sympathetic division will stimulate the release of renin. So here's our hormonal aspect, okay? Technically, renin is an enzyme, but again, the chemical aspect. So, and we're going to get to the hormones, the other chemicals, right? So it stimulates renin. Renin is made by those juxtaglomerular cells, and when renin is released, we already have angiotensinogen that's been made by the liver circulating in the blood. So renin will, the enzyme, will then cleave a part of angiotensinogen, and this creates angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 is then, right, changed by the enzyme angiotensin converting enzyme made by the lungs, and we get angiotensin 2. So all this to lead to this very powerful chemical that causes vasoconstriction throughout the body, not just in the arterioles here in the kidneys, but throughout the body, okay? And we remember that if you have increased vasoconstriction, you have increased resistance, and increased resistance increases pressure, all right? So we're trying to solve this problem, because drop in blood pressure is deadly, right? If you drop your blood pressure, you're compromising your ability to deliver, because it's the pressure that pushes, all right? And then angiotensin 2 leads to the release of aldosterone, right? Another powerful, these are all chemicals, powerful chemical. And aldosterone, we know, made by the adrenal cortex, will target the kidneys, and specifically we now know principal cells in the collecting ducts and cells in the distal convoluted tubule, and cause them to transport more sodium. And again, when that sodium transported back to the body, so reabsorbed. And when sodium is brought back to the body in the presence of aldosterone, water comes with it. Why is this great? Because then that water adds volume. And so blood volume goes up or stabilizes because of this water, and that means blood pressure either goes up or at least stabilizes with this reabsorption. All right. Now, autoregulation, I mentioned this to you before, the kidney gets to have self-rule. It gets to determine its own filtration because the kidney does not want to be slaved or subjected to what the systemic blood pressure is doing on a regular basis. Because let's face it, your systemic blood pressure goes up and down. Mine is up right now, just talking to you guys and gesticulating and getting excited about this information. And I don't want my kidney filtration rate to increase because of that. So the kidneys have to have this ability. And I said previously that really the kidneys can regulate themselves, their own glomerular filtration rate, in spite of changes, between 80 and 180 in your mean arterial blood pressure, which is amazing, all right? So again, what I'm saying here, need to regulate blood flow, right, in spite of the changes in blood pressure. Again, here we're talking systemic blood pressure. Pressure goes down when we sleep and up when we exercise, but filtration rates need to be maintained. They need to be constant, and they are determined by that systemic blood pressure. So how do we do that? Well, here again, it's the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and we talk about the myogenic, so the smooth muscle mechanism, it's a reflex, and the tubuloglomerular feedback. So this is the macula densa cells, all right, because it's in the renal tubule. That's where it gets it, and it affects the glomerulus. All right, so we've mentioned this previously. We're just kind of tying this up for you guys. So the myogenic mechanism is a smooth muscle in the arterioles, right? Right, there we go, muscle, right? If stretched, right, so stretch receptors are sensing this change in pressure. So if pressure goes up, volume goes up, you're stretching the afferent arteriole, and the muscle automatically contracts. This is a reflex that actually occurs in a lot of places in the body, but here we're focusing on the kidney. So if stretched, the muscle contracts. Right? If there is no stretch, the muscle is relaxed. All right? So here's our scenario. Increased blood pressure, increased stretch, you get vasoconstriction, controls flow. So you don't have more flow coming in with more pressure or more volume. You are keeping a constant flow. All right? The tubuloglomerular feedback. Again, you're either going to contract or relax the afferent arteriole. This is really the basic, right? And the smooth muscle in the afferent, because if we talk about contraction, relaxation, we're talking about relaxation, we're talking muscle, all right? So these are paracrine signaling. Again, the macula densa, so you're released by one cell affects a neighboring cell. So macula densa cells sense fluid flow rate and sodium concentration. So they have sensors not only for, what the movement of the filtrate through the tubes, but also for the amount of sodium in the tubule by the time we get to the far end of the renal tubule, the distal. So if glomerular filtration, here's our scenario, if glomerular filtration rate increases, there's less time in the proximal convoluted tubule to reabsorb sodium chloride. And so, by the time we get to the distal convoluted tubules with the macula densa, there is a high osmolarity of the filtrate. So there's more stuff in the filtrate than there should be. And there's a high flow rate, right? Because this is the push. So macula densa will release paracrine substances that cause the juxtaglomerular cells, right, those ones that are surrounding the afferent arteriole, to constrict and decrease flow, right? If glomerular filtration rate decreases, there is lower sodium, and that means no release of paracrine, and so we stay relaxed and dilated as an afferent arteriole. All right? Hormonal regulation of kidney function. So here on the scale, again, things we've already talked about, but we're just trying to consolidate here at the end of the chapter. So we have both the endocrine and the paracrine, and we've talked about endocrine like aldosterone and antidiuretic hormone, and we've talked about a few paracrine, but we're just, again, consolidating. Because we're trying, these kidneys are so imperative to our function, we want to talk about how do we keep them constant, all right? So we say again, these chemicals are mostly involved in stimulating or inhibiting blood flow through the kidneys, all right? And blood concentration. Yeah, no surprise, because that's the kidney's job. And this is done to maintain systemic needs. What does your body need? So we're going to control how much blood is moving through the kidneys and what is happening to the blood as it moves through the kidneys, blood concentration. So here again, we've talked renin, angiotensin, aldosterone, and that's vasoconstriction. We've talked antidiuretic hormone, right, for the process of bringing back water, and this generally ADH is activated when the RAA system's activated. Endothelin is a paracrine substance made by, yes, you guessed it, endothelial cells, which are simple squamous cells in all your blood vessels, and they are also responsible for vasoconstriction. So they are a paracrine, whereas again angiotensin 2 is an endocrine. It's more widespread, right? That's a local, right? And then natriuretic hormones or peptides, right? These are actually going to do the opposite. That's why I've color-coded these red and green, right? These are going to be influenced when blood volume's too high and you need to increase the glomerular filtration rate. These are going to decrease the glomerular filtration rate because of that vasoconstriction. And then there's parathyroid hormone that we mentioned in this section too, but it's kind of the outlier because it's specifically affecting calcium, whereas these are really affecting the flow that we talked about. And all right, so here's again our scenario. If blood volume and pressure decrease, so you're dropping, right? Your systemic is about 92, you're dropping down. So we're going to activate, again, we've already said this, we're reinforcing it, the renin, angiotensinogen, right, aldosterone. So angiotensin 2, vasoconstriction, constricting both the afferent and the efferent arterioles, so decreasing glomerular filtration rate and trying, again, this vasoconstriction, trying to bring pressure up and conserve volume of blood with activating also aldosterone and ADH. So aldosterone specifically, how does it affect this? Well, this, and here's a scenario, if we have a release of angiotensin 2 or there's an increase in plasma potassium levels, or a decrease in sodium, right, we have the reabsorption of sodium. And why is this important? Because it, right, helps reabsorb water. So I just say retention of water. So reabsorption of sodium retains water, and water means blood volume, and blood volume means blood pressure, right? ADH, specifically blood volume, because it influences those, right, intercalated cells to reabsorb water. Decreasing the urine volume, as I talked about already, maintaining the concentration of your blood, because your concentration was increasing, and then maintaining your blood pressure, because your blood pressure had dropped. Endothelin, as I said, or thelin, is a powerful vasoconstrictor, but it's local. It's a local influence, and it also gets stimulated by angiotensin 2 to continue and specify the constriction. All right. If blood volume and pressure increase, then we have the natriuretic hormones, including atrial natriuretic, and there's a ventricular natriuretic hormone. All right. So collectively, natriuretic, and this natrium is sodium anyway. That's what that word root is in. They get rid of sodium. So these are the anti-aldosterones, and that's how you should think of them. Anti. They block aldosterone, right? So we don't have the transporters made in the principal cells and in the distal convoluted tubules, all right? So sodium stays in the filtrate, okay, doesn't get reabsorbed, and water stays with it. So again, volume has gone up, pressure's gone up, I gotta get rid of this, I gotta pee it away. So the atrial natriuretic hormone specifically, here's how it works. When the atria are stretched, and they're stretched because there's more blood volume, more blood pressure, it increases glomerular filtration rate by dilating, right, so vasodilation of the afferent, constricting the efferent, right, and causing the decrease in reabsorption of sodium, so there's a decrease in reabsorption of water. All right, we'll come back on the next video and talk finally, bring again all of this together with this scenarios about regulating fluid volumes and compositions.